Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the East Lyme Board of Finance special meeting. Today is Wednesday, July 28th, 2021. The time is now 7:02 p.m. If you would please rise and join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Hello, Peter. With that, we are going to move on to delegations. I see a number of people in the audience tonight. I would just like to remind the audience of some of our language in our bylaws which permit the delegations before the main meat of our meeting to be limited to those items under new business. If there is something that you would like to speak to the Board of Finance regarding something that's not on our agenda this evening, I would ask that you reserve those comments later in the agenda where it says item number 6, public discussion. So with that, is there anybody in the audience that would like to address the Board of Finance regarding any new business item on the agenda? Yes, ma'am. Could you please come to the podium? State your name and address for the record.
My name is Kathy Cassidy. I live at 14 Rockwood Drive in Waterford. However, I am a taxpayer at 488 Main Street, as well as the treasurer of the East Lyme Public Trust Foundation. And the reason why I am here tonight is based on the American Rescue Plan money, with $200,000 being requested to go towards the public safety building. And just to remind the people of the board and the town that money was received from FEMA based on damage to the boardwalk from Irene and Katrina, and at that time the East Lyme Public Trust Foundation requested $50,000 of that money be set aside for maintenance. And during that vote of a 4-hour meeting, I thank you all for your service because that was a long meeting. But during that meeting, at no time was any funding set aside for maintenance of the boardwalk. And we would just like to remind everyone that American Rescue Plan, the boardwalk, it is a gem in this town, and we find that $50,000 would be an appropriate amount to set aside for the maintenance. A letter was sent in June of this year to the Board of Selectmen members, and it did outline projects that we had requested be put on the list for American recovery money. So again, just as a reminder that the gem in the town is the boardwalk, and we would like some money from tonight's American Rescue Fund planned discussion.
Thank you, Ms. Cassidy. Thank you for your comments. Is there anybody else that would like to address the board? Yes, Pat Larkin.
Good evening. Pat Larkin, 14 Oak Hill Drive, Niantic. I'd like to talk about the special appropriation of $200,000 for the PSB roof and other expenses. One of the questions I have is, what exactly are other expenses in this request? It appears open-ended and can be spent on any way that they like. I think before the board can take any action on this, they should know where the funds are going, detailed out rather than just as other expenses. Also, according to the Town Building Committee meeting minutes, I believe it was July 15th, our building official stated that a new permit would be required to be pulled to replace the roof on the PSB building. So if we're going to get a new permit and everything, I think we should do this replacement correctly and go out and get some bids, get bids for a 20-year roof and a 30-year roof, and let the town voters decide what they want to replace the roof with, rather than go with a 20 versus a 30. And also, instead of using the American Rescue Funds, if I remember correctly, there was about a $300,000 contingency built into the public service building budget. And I just wonder why we're not using any of that contingency funds to replace the roof instead of using the American Rescue Funds. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in the audience that would like to address this board this evening? Yes, Mike Schultz. Good evening.
Evening, board members. Thank you for your service. There's a couple items on your agenda I'd like to speak to this evening. I'm sorry? I'm sorry, Lover's Lane. Yeah. In my opinion, we've dug ourselves quite a hole with this public service building. Between the roof replacement, the air handlers, the water system that was out there, the road, egress, access, the trees, and probably more importantly, such a lousy location. It really is not appropriate for the public access to the police. And we need that access to go into these buildings, such as we had in Niantic, to talk to the police and be interviewed by them at times. Because our town is getting to be a real mess. And at the end of this, I'll show you an example of that. I don't think we have any choice but to replace that roof. There's no question about it. It's apparently, it's 33 years old. And I don't know about commercial insurance, but I know that my insurance companies, and they had more than one, would not insure my home because my roof was 20 years old. And there are some companies that will, because I have some insurance, but there are many, the first question they ask you, how old is your roof? So, in my opinion, as well as the gentleman before me, to look at a 20-year replacement roof versus a 30-year is silly. Go for the 30-year, be done with it. The other, and as a part of the insurance aspect, is this building insured right now? Because of the age of that roof. Has some insurance company insured it? Does anyone have an answer to that? I would hope that it is, but I don't understand why it would be if the roof is that old. Secondly, ask for the use of the American Rescue Plan. Dollars to hire, this is on your agenda, this is a part of it. Dollars to hire a clinical therapist, counselors, and a wellness/preventative prevention mentoring coordinator for youth services. Nuts, people. I am tired of having to pay for parents failing to provide adequate oversight for their kids, passing responsibilities onto the taxpayer. We have already added numerous extra medical staff at the school system, counselors, psychiatrists, social workers, occupational therapists. That's where the business belongs, not some after-school additional expense put on the taxpayer. Parents have got to learn to stand up and honor what their responsibility is to their kids. And with that in mind, I would appreciate that I come up and have you pass this around to the board and return it to me.
Okay.
I'll make a statement on it. That in front of you is the acceleration of a vehicle in front of my home on Lover's Lane. A Mercedes-Benz with about a 600 horsepower engine on a weekend, when I had guests, stopped in front of my home, lit up that vehicle. You could not see it. Totally disappeared the vehicle with smoke from the tires burning. And he started skidding out of control, and the only thing that caused him to let off is he was about to hit a fire hydrant. Now, I had a meeting with the local police department on this issue. And it's an example of the renegade kids running wild, and that's not the only vehicle. That happens during the day, it happens at night, keeping people awake. So the parents need to step up and take care of their kids. Never mind this, getting extra money for counselors. The ones that need counseling are the parents. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. You can pick up the picture from our recording secretary. Okay. With that, is there anybody else that would like to address the Board of Finance this evening? Anybody at all? Okay, seeing no hands, we will move on to new business. The first item being a special appropriation for the capital non-recurring expense Board of Education pool roof funds in the amount of $20,000. So if the Board of Education member will come to the podium and please explain for our board as well as the audience.
Good evening. Jeff Newton, Superintendent. I'm going to call Mr. Lund, our Facilities Director, in just a second. Just want to give a quick little bit of history for our community in relation to the pool and as well as the Board of Finance. Many of you might already know, but if you don't, our pool, our aquatic center is now sitting at 22 years old. It's age, we've done a great job, I think, maintaining it, but there are some pictures that Mr. Lund will talk about that are floating around in just a second. But we're having issues with the roof, and for some additional history, when they put the roof on 22 years ago, when they built the structure, there was issues in the way they put it on. There wasn't enough insulation. There was a settlement that occurred with a pot of money being down here, at the town, and it has grown to about $129,000, which hopefully everybody is aware of too. We're hoping to use some of those reserve funds to do a study and to begin to look at resolving the issue in the pictures that you see where flakes are falling down on patrons now of the community. So I want to turn it over to Mr. Lund to give some more description and additional information on some of the issues, and then we'll go from there. Thank you.
So Mr. Newton did a pretty good job already of introducing the problem, but before you should have several photos that have been taken basically from ground level, standing on the pool deck, looking upwards at the purlins on the roof predominantly. And what you can see is a lot of rust along the members of the roof. So what we are requesting is the money to use to hire a expert to conduct destructive testing. And what that means is we'll get on a lift and they'll go and they'll cut out parts of the insulation so they can see what's behind it, as well as taking some samples of the metal to see how extensive the corrosion is. From the deck, it looks like it's only superficial, but what we need to do is get up there and get a really close-up look to see what the actual extent is. So they'll do that over the course of a couple days. We're hoping to get it done in the very near future during our annual shutdown of the pool, so as not to inconvenience any of the customers, and get a result very soon after that. And that will include not just a analysis of the current condition, but some recommendations for mitigating and preventing future problems with the roof. So I'm more than welcome to answer any questions anyone might have. Yes.
Hi. Are people still allowed to swim?
Yes, yep.
They are?
We have been using it.
Okay, so how is that working with the roof, or is it not like over them, or I'm just kind of...
It is. It's on the inside of the roof, so it's the ceiling, for lack of a better term. So you can see it right above you. There are instances in that last picture that I think that's on your page, or the last set of pictures. There is some flaking of rust into the roof, and if you were to look in the pool bottom, you can see it in various areas. We have had a occasion where a piece of rust has fallen and hit someone, and that really brought it to a head recently when one of the customers actually, I think, quit, canceled her membership, and said she's not coming back until we get that addressed. So that really pushed it forward. We haven't seen any, it's not like large chunks are falling down, but it is starting to flake off and it's become more prevalent. The dehumidification system was installed years ago, and I think that's helped to slow the process, but until it's taken down to bare metal and recoated at a minimum, it's still going to continue to rust.
Thank you.
Sure.
Chris, just a question here about the photographs. So they'll be part of the public record. I just wanted to make sure, these are photographs you've taken yourself?
Yes.
Okay, and do you know about when you took them?
Within last 90 days, maybe.
Okay, so,
Yep.
okay, and we're looking at roof, and then in that last page, we're looking at,
A piece of rust that was on the pool deck that we took a picture of.
okay. Okay, so, our recording secretary can identify, put some identifying information with the pictures.
Sure.
Thank you. Thanks.
Any other questions? Yes, John?
Two things. When did this start, the pieces of the ceiling start falling into the pool?
I don't know. I'm told it's been going for a couple of years, but I've only been here the last 2, so I don't know what the history prior to that is.
If that's been happening for a couple of years, aren't you worried about liability? If somebody's suing you if they get hit?
Well,
A
that's
larger piece of it.
we haven't, and that's part of the reason why we're doing the investigation, is to see what the extent is. At least visually, we don't see any pieces that look like they would, they're in a condition where they would be flaking off large chunks. But at present time, it's I think to the state where we really need to start doing something to address it before it gets to that point where either larger chunks are flaking or there's structural concerns with the roof itself. Not that it would collapse necessarily or suddenly, but if you start to lose supports interior, then the roof starts to sag and it becomes progressive after that.
At some point, if it becomes serious, you're going to have to shut the pool down.
And yep, and we would like to get it mitigated and addressed before we get to that point.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
So once you get the inspection report, then will you go out to bid to see like who would have to either replace or repair the roof?
That would be the natural next step. So there's an intermediate step. If it's significant enough that it warrants additional design work or investigation work, we'd do that first. But ultimately, yes, we would go out to bid to a contractor to resolve the issue.
What do you mean by design work?
If there are, let's say, for example, there are some sections of metal that need to be cut out and replaced, the actual, how would you accomplish that? Doing the design of either stabilizing it while you take that section out and putting it back in. So there may be a blueprint, or if we have to take more insulation down to, potentially we find a problem behind it, so that we'd have to do some further work. So there may be some additional engineering associated with it, depending on what the investigation finds.
Thank you.
Yes, Rich?
At the conclusion of this investigation, there's going to be remediation that's necessary any way that the investigation turns out from looking at the pictures. Do you have a feel? I know it's kind of hard to tell because you're just at the investigation stage, but from a standpoint of minimal, let's say it's just kind of cleaning up the beams that are there and recoating them, to a major reconstruction, do you have a range of prices we might be looking at? Just rough ballpark?
I really have to say I don't at this point in time. It would be it's an interesting project from the standpoint of even if there's no structural issues, it's going to be very labor intensive to, to scrape all the paint, as well as the staging to get to the roof with the pool there makes it very, very interesting. So I haven't even tried to guess at what it may cost.
Do you have a feel for, let's say, the simplest remediation process, how long the pool may be shut down?
Again, I really haven't looked at it because, often when you spec out a project, you leave it up to the contractor to figure out the best way to do it. So I would hope if I were a contractor, I'd find an easy way to stage it to get the work done as quickly as possible.
Right.
So, but I really couldn't guess.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Hi, Chris, just a couple of quick follow-up questions. It says here that you have an on-call architect waiting to
Yes.
look at this problem. Do they have experience looking at these types of issues in other buildings?
So they have some experience designing natoriums, I guess is the appropriate term, aquatic centers, as well as they may bring in another expert who has done some forensic work within aquatic centers as well. And she is also a structural engineer by trade. So they would reach out and bring in some additional assistance in the expertise for that.
So they are on call, they're ready to go. How long do you imagine that this inspection would take?
I think we're planning on 3 days, and then a couple weeks after that to get the report.
Okay.
We were planning, was it mid-August to shut the pool down?
Yeah,
Just the
right.
drain.
Right. The pool is right now scheduled for closure from August 11th through 22nd, so that's when we plan to do the work.
Okay. And if we approve this appropriation tonight, you think that you can meet those timelines?
Yes.
But again, just for,
This is only for the investigation.
only for the investigation?
Right.
Okay. So we won't know until we get the report in September timeframe, perhaps,
right.
what the extent of the damage and what the true cost of this replacement would be. But we do know, after appropriating $20,000 this evening, you'll have approximately $110,000 left in the fund to go toward
Right.
whatever that fee is going to be. Okay.
Correct.
All right. Thank you. Any further questions for Mr. Lund? Okay. If there's no further questions, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve a special appropriation of up to $20,000 from CNRE account 32-99-09-900-001, parentheses, ELHS pool reserve, pool roof reserve, for a roof damage investigation at the East Lyme Schools Aquatic Center. Original Board of Education authorization amount is $17,010. Additional Board of Education approval would be needed prior to spending the remaining $2,990. A town meeting is required.
Thank you, Ann. Do I have a second? Thank you, Rich. Any further discussion? Having no further discussion, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries 600. Thank you. With that, we will move on to new business. Item B, a special appropriation for our acquisition program in the amount of $1,241,500. Who will be speaking in support of that appropriation request this evening?
For several years now, we have been using a 5-year financing program to purchase various vehicles and equipment for the town and technology equipment for the Board of Education.
Yeah, let's pause. Should we pause for a moment?
This?
That is the microphone. Okay. Yeah, and if you could just bring it a little closer so we can hear you.
Oh, so you think if I put it close, I was gonna go up to the podium.
Oh, that would be great.
Yeah, because it was the microphone. Yeah, the microphone. Okay, so this is our annual, as I said, acquisition program, and from time to time, we also include items for water and/or sewer utility operations. And in this year, we have included some water utility, a couple of vehicles. The water utility vehicles were discussed and approved by the Water and Sewer Commission at their May 25th meeting, and they do have the funding in their within their budget to pay their share of the payments. I don't know if anyone has any questions. Most of the items in the plan are included in the in our annual CIP. I will mention that there may have been some confusion because in the CIP, the police vehicles are listed at $81,000. However, that was an error, and the correct amount is $140,000 for the two vehicles. The police vehicles, as you know, their payments come from the funds that we take in from the outside overtime jobs, and they're funded through CNRE. The public works vehicles, the parks and recreation vehicles, and the Board of Education technology, their payments are included within our general fund operating budget. Of course, the Board of Ed portion is, within their budget, but the remaining portion is in the town's budget, and they are found in our Department 724. I don't know if anyone has any questions.
Does anybody have any questions for the Finance Director regarding this $1.2 million appropriation? I had a lengthy discussion with Ms. Johnson last week, so I feel comfortable with the number as she suggested. All but two items are exactly what was approved at our annual budget meeting. One being the, one exception being the police appropriation request. And the other being water and sewer. I found her explanation to be satisfactory. So I really don't have any further concerns with this. I think for the public record, it's worth perhaps, Anna, you reiterating how that works with the bonding for the water and sewer department. They're a separate entity. If you could again just explain very simply how they use the full faith of our government to help them bond their projects, but they do pay us back in the entirety from their water drinking funds, water and sewer fees.
Right. So when the Water and Sewer Commission has projects that require bonding, first they approve them and make the request to go through our town appropriation process, and they are done on the full faith and credit of the town. And for the financing deal, it's the same. It's kind of like the same principle. Their piece is done with the rest of the towns being on the full faith and credit of the town.
Thank you. Are there any questions for our Finance Director regarding this appropriation request? Hearing no one and seeing no hands, I'll entertain a motion.
Resolved that the resolution entitled, "A Resolution of the Town of East Lyme, Connecticut, authorizing the execution and delivery of an equipment lease/purchase agreement and schedules thereto for the acquisition, purchase, financing, and leasing of certain equipment, a copy of which is attached hereto, is hereby adopted and recommended for approval by the legal voters of the town at town meeting." We waive reading the resolution in its entirety as it has been on file with the town clerk.
Thanks, Ann. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thanks, John. Any further discussion? Having no further discussion, all those in favor of this appropriation, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries 600. Okay, thank you. With that, we will move on to the special appropriation request for $200,000 for a public safety building roof and other expenses, funding of which would come from the American Rescue Plan funds. Who will
Mr.
be?
Daigle will first address you.
Okay.
Available. Mr. O'Connor is here, Rocky's here from the town building committee with a few questions. If you had specifics on the building itself, this is a town building committee project. They have the answers to that as well. So Paul,
Paul Daigle, Board of Selectmen. Tonight I'm here representing the Board of Selectmen and the Building Committee for one item, and that's the item to replace the roof on the public safety building. You should have a couple handouts in your packets. And I want to make a couple clarifying points. One, I am not on the Building Committee. I am not the chairman of the Building Committee, and I don't vote as part of the Building Committee. I am a temporary ex officio from the Board of Selectmen to the Building Committee, in addition to Mark Salerno, and I was so chosen based on my involvement with the Vision Committee that came up with the design and recommendations for placing this contract. So I want to bring your attention, I don't know if you have a 11 by 17 sheet. If you don't, I know you're going to have to squint. But this will answer some of the questions that were previously asked. But this is the Building Committee's tally of the execution of the rehabilitation plan for the public safety building. Up top is the total budget for the contract of the work to do the work at $4,395,000. Down below is the $309,000 worth of roughly of contingency that was approved by the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Finance, and the taxpayers of East Lyme. And this is a tally of change orders that the Building Committee has addressed to execute the project. The items in this tally that are in yellow, highlighted in yellow, have not yet been approved. If you come down to the bottom, the tally, if all of those items were to be approved, you can see at the total contingency encumbered, we would exceed the $309,000 that's been approved, and it gives you a total of $344,000 if everything was to be approved, which would cause us to be about overrun the budget by $35,000, which the Building Committee cannot authorize the expenditure of funds to exceed what's been approved. And the situation with the roof was not part of the original contract, and it is not in this tally yet because it has not been approved and there's not enough funding to pay for it. So there's two reasons why we're before you tonight. The first is the need for the roof. During the Vision Committee meetings in putting this project together, based on a recommendation from the architect that the roof had 3 to 5 years of life left in it, the decision, right or wrongly, was made that the roof would not be part of the project, that it would be something that would be addressed at a future date. There was some minimum amount of money put into the contract to do some repair of leaks if they developed, especially as part of the work to cut a hole in the roof to support installing the elevator. Subsequent to that, there is one change order, and I'm probably going to have a hard time finding it because I didn't highlight it, but there has been some additional attempts to repair the leaks in the roof, and it's on here somewhere. It's about $3,000. It is, I'll find it, I'm sorry, but roof repair leaks, PCO item 46, $2,400. So, at the recommendation of both the general contractor, Noble Construction, his recommendation is that the roof needs to be replaced. Additional attempts to repair the leaks will cost additional money. It will not extend the life of the roof necessarily. Also, the timing required to execute those repairs is unpredictable. You do a repair, you wait for a rainstorm, you wait 2 or 3 days. There's been experience where some of the leaks don't actually get into the building for a couple of days. So we'd be spending more money excuse me, not we, the building committee would be spending more money making repairs, not knowing when they could get it done. Because of the leaks, and because a majority of them have entered the building, they're over the IT room up on the second floor. The chief of police has determined that he does not want to put his IT communication equipment in that into that room with an unknown quantity of leaks that could damage some of, not all of the $500,000 that's budgeted for communication. All the equipment's going in. It's the servers. There's also, desktop units that go down in other places of the building. So that portion of the project is now on hold, pending resolution of the roof. If you look over to the right-hand side of the bottom of the page, I just tried to do a little summary. That is me. That's not the building committee. So I rounded things off. If all the current items that haven't been authorized or approved were $35,000 over budget. The items that are at the top show an underrun, predicted underrun for the clerk of the works of $10,000, and the finishing of connecting the water supply, which was a town obligation. It was not part of the general contractor's work. That would reduce the $35,000 to a $20,000 overrun. And if the item here for $43,000 for the stove vent, the original design drawings, which was approved by the town fire marshal for a stove to be placed in the kitchen area, cafeteria area, if you will, of the public safety building, called for a standard, home-type ventilation hood over the stove. The subsequent fire marshal identified that as unsatisfactory design, even though it was approved by the town. To put a stove into the facility it requires a commercial hood vented through the roof, and that is the estimate that the contractor provided the building committee to install a per-code ventilation hood and exhaust from the first floor up through the second floor. If that is not completed and not authorized, then it would leave $23,000 of the contingency left in case anything else comes up as they finish the project. If for some reason the building committee decides and they have $43,000 left, they can make that decision if they want to authorize to put that vent hood in. And the very last number at the bottom is currently the contracted purchase orders for the communication system is underrunning the budget by $10,460, and that's being kept aside in case there's any unforeseen need to make additional charges to get that communication system, multiple communication system. It's not just the radio, it's 911, it's communications with the state, it's channel 23. There's probably 5 different communication systems going in the building. So that's where we're at with the contingency money to date, and the project is basically on hold, cannot execute or predict a completion date, and that was presented to the building committee. The recommendation of both the general contractor and the architectural firm Silver Petrocelli is to expend additional funds to try and repair the leaks. It is not the right thing to do at this time. The right thing to do is to replace the roof. The estimate or the prospective change order, which was not included in this tally back on July 14th. You also have that in your packet. It's $171,349.05. That is a quote provided by the general contractor with a subcontractor. It includes replacing the roof with a 20-year warranted roofing system. It includes increasing the quantity of volume of insulation on the roof to meet current code of R30. It includes the disposal of all debris, and it does include raising one structure on the roof to get it high enough with the more insulation to be able to get the flashing in. So that's the cost. The $200,000 recommendation to do that was to include some contingency in that. That's the the other reasons. Once they open up the roof, if there's any additional things that they don't know, that represents a 16.7% contingency to be able to use in case some unforeseen things are encountered. So the recommendation was presented to the building committee. The building committee unanimously approved the execution of this change order once funding for it is approved by town commissions and boards and, of course, the public in a town meeting. So that's why we're here. That's why the building committee has endorsed the need to change the roof out. As far as 20 versus 30 years, that was the recommendation that was brought forward. 30 years, if we go with 30 years, we'd have to go ask and get an updated price for this. Obviously, I would fully imagine that it would be more expensive. As far as going out to bid, the contractor, Noble Construction, has done an outstanding job. They've given back money for items that were removed that the building committee approved. He's a reputable contractor. He stands behind his subcontractor who provided this estimate. It is a known quantity, technically satisfactory roof that includes a 20-year warranty. As that was presented to the building committee, as I stated earlier, they unanimously approved it, and of course the Board of Selectmen did, and that's why it's forwarded to you. Regarding the use of American Rescue funds, that was discussed. I don't want to speak for the entire board, and Mr. Nickerson can add some things on. There was originally thought of a discussion of using the FEMA money. There was members of the board understand that FEMA money was put aside. There's requests for the use of that, specifically for maintenance work on the boardwalk, and it was decided that we wouldn't use that fund. We'd keep it for things related to the storm. And this type of work is authorized under the American Rescue Fund, as Mark, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, as reviewed by town attorneys to support public safety. We have, as a community, purchased and invested and authorized up to $7.2 million to open this facility. This is $200,000 to complete that project and give the roof a 20-year life, which with proper maintenance that's when the warranty expires, but it can be extended, of course, with proper maintenance. So this is the ask for this additional $20,000 is to protect the town's investment into this $7.2 million project. So with that, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions regarding the need for the roof at this time, or the estimate that we've received from the general contractor to execute that plan.
Thank you, Mr. Daigle. I'm going to open up questions to our board in just a few moments, but since you brought up the estimate from Noble Construction on the roof.
I didn't bring it up. We provided it to you, but just reviewing it.
Okay, semantics, very well. It's before us. We're looking at it very scrupulously, and so I have a question.
Okay.
Regarding the estimate from Noble of $150,800. That was a total, and it says right here, for a subcontractor cost associated with this change. Underneath that line item is a total markup on subcontractors' work for $7,540. Is that to say that Noble employees will not be doing this work, that they will be hiring a subcontractor to complete this work? And we are paying for the markup of the management of that work?
Let me correct one thing. On the back of the page, that is not a Noble estimate. That is the estimate from their subcontractor. Premier Building Associates is the organization or the company that will execute the work. So that $150,800 estimate provides the execution of the work as listed on that page. When you come over to the
front page. That is reflected down on line number 7 at the bottom. Okay? The additional costs up top are to do some carpentry work to support the installation of the roof, including raising the one structure on the roof that has to be raised. And then, yes, the Noble Construction has the responsibility to oversee the execution of this work. It's their subcontractor, and they will expend time and money and labor hours to over. They will not execute the work, but they will be there to support oversight of the work. So yes, that is the cost of Noble Construction execution of the work, and it totals the $13,900. And then, of course, there's with any contractor, there's a markup to cover his overhead costs, whether it's running to the store to get a piece of material or whatever it may be. So, that can range anywhere from 10 to 15%, depending on the work and the contractor. And Mr. Noble has brought that in at a 5% coverage. Total estimate to execute the work, support executing the work is $171,000.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Could you also just clarify for our constituent that insurance is present on this building, and could you let us know what the total amount of that is?
I do not have that knowledge at all. I do not know what
Does
the
the
town
first-
has for insurance coverage.
Does the first,
We bought the building with insurance on it. It's with Karma, which is our, with the packaging, insure all the buildings, our boardwalk and everything else.
so it's an umbrella package for all of the municipally owned buildings?
Correct.
Yes, Anna, did you have something to add?
Yes, and so, once the construction, started, we moved it from our main policy onto a builder's risk policy.
Very
We do
good.
that for all projects. And I believe, the cost was $9,300, some odd dollars.
The annual premium for the builder's risk policy while the construction was going on?
Correct. And actually, I believe, the policy, we had to renew it because it went beyond, it's going beyond,
Right.
July 30th. So,
Right.
yeah, but it is on builder's risk.
Okay.
When construction is completed.
Okay, thank you, Anna, for that, answering that question for our constituent. Okay, with that, I'm going to open up a line of questioning from other members of our board. Who would like to begin? Yes, Rich?
Yes. In response to communications earlier this week to the Board of Finance, I submitted a dozen questions that I thought that we would receive answers to.
And you will get them tonight if you want to ask the questions. None of them were specifically to the architect who couldn't be here tonight,
Right.
or necessarily the builder.
Right.
But we have Rocky here, and we have Paul here, and myself, and most of those questions can be answered in the public realm.
Oh, okay. Okay, great. And for our recording secretary, I've printed off questions, so after I ask them, I can give these to you, make it easier for your records. On the
I just also wanted to add that a lot of these questions are town building commission issues and questions, but we'll try to get them out into the public tonight.
Oh, okay.
It's not necessarily, they're not finance questions, but we'll get them out tonight. Rocky, you're still here, right? You're still there? So you're gonna pay attention to these questions, you should probably answer them. Ready? Okay.
Okay, here we go. On the flip side, on the Premier Building Associates quote, there are some exclusions. And my first two questions have to do with the exclusion of hazardous materials or abatement. And I'm wondering, for a lot of building materials, roofs, floors, etc., there are sometimes hazardous materials from 30, 35 years ago. I'm wondering, do we have any such hazardous materials that might need to be disposed of from the original roof?
Prior to the completion of design, environmental engineer was hired and sampled the building and found no hazardous materials anywhere.
Excellent. And then their other exclusion is interior-exterior protection. do we need to be concerned at all for protection of the work which has already been done with the current renovations?
Oh, yeah. But it's not a highly probable.
Okay.
The entire roof has metal deck, and all the work is going to be done above that metal deck. So the chances of anything falling through the metal deck are very slim.
Oh, okay. Thank you. And then Mr. Daigle had already answered the question that I had about the 5% markup for the subcontractors.
Yeah,
that's a fair market price.
That was in his contract.
Right, I saw that. I just didn't know if that's what-
15% on his work and 5% on any subcontractor's
Oh,
work.
okay. The fourth question refers to the line where it's PCO 46.
Yeah.
I was wondering, is the replacement of the roof covered as a line item in the original quote? It appears that just the repair of roof leaks.
There was an allowance to
There's allowance.
chase some, if leaks appeared.
Oh,
But they expended that allowance. That's why we had to spend the additional $2,400.
Oh, okay. And then this is line PCO 50 bunker roof and wall leak in reference to what Ann Chichello and I observed at the back of the proposed Sally Port, an entrance to the fire marshal's office. Is this in reference to the flashing and the regrading that was recently done at the back of the building?
No, when the bunker was put in, it was not flashed properly to the building.
Right.
And it was between the bunker and the building, water was able to come in. There was all they had was sheet plastic,
Oh,
and that
okay.
deteriorated over time.
Right.
So now this 46 was to repair that.
Oh, okay. And then have we noticed any other wall leaks?
The only leaks that they noticed were in windows, and they repaired the caulking, and so far there's been no more leaks.
Oh, okay. Excellent. And then the line where it's PCO 5, the drain vent in the Sally Port, is this an indication of other water issues? Or
No,
is
that
this-
was a discontinued vent pipe.
Oh, okay.
They just took it out.
Okay, thank you. And then PCO 25B, revamp water penetration. What's entailed with this and what issue is being addressed? I see that it was done by the town department.
Oh, that was, the town hired their own contractor to run the underground line from that housing development into the building.
Oh, okay.
And when they went through the wall of the building, they didn't do it to the satisfaction of the building inspector. It wasn't smooth, it was rough. So the building inspector wouldn't approve it.
Right.
So we got the contractor to come back and repair it.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I asked the questions of water penetration because I'm concerned with mold, which was pointed out when we toured the facility. When
Yeah,
we
there was
walked out the
there was a period of time when we took out the old air handler. There's two main air handlers that supply the building. We took out one to replace it, and the other one was shut down because it had to be tied into the new control system.
Right.
And there was a period where there was not much air conditioning going on, but that's been resolved,
Right.
and the mold has been removed.
Okay. This is PCO 36 and PCO 42.
Yeah.
Front drainage addition and rework French drain at the generator. Do we have drainage issues with where the building's located?
Well, what happened there was an underground drain, and it was right where the new generator was supposed to go.
Oh,
So they had to interrupt the drain when they put in the generator,
Right.
and this is to reroute that drain.
Oh, okay. And then PCO 34
Yeah.
is raising the roof curbs. And I'm wondering, since we're installing a new roof, if that could be a cost saving or what happens with that PCO?
I was in anticipation of having to put in extra insulation.
Right.
So when they put in a new air handler, in anticipation of that, they raised the curb.
Oh, okay. Because I thought I had understood that the roof would have needed to be for the new roof, that we will be raising.
For one additional component on the roof.
Oh, okay.
This was for the new air handling unit, and they did it at that time.
Oh, okay.
And that was authorized to raise the curb at that time, in anticipation that sometime in the future the roof was going to have to be replaced.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Instead of taking the air handling unit off and then raising the curb, they did it at the time of installation.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
We anticipated your approval.
Okay. Premier Building Associates will remove and dispose roofing materials down to metal decking per their quote. Do we currently know the integrity of the metal decking? If, is there any rust or metallic defect? We had the presentation about the roof at the natatorium, or the pool at the high school, and I would presume this roof has been leaking for a number of years, not just recently.
That's a different situation. The pool was high humidity, high chlorine.
Oh, okay.
That causes rust. But any inspections so far have found no deterioration in the existing metal deck.
Oh, okay. And were these inspections from the contractor? An
Just
external
just
inspector?
casual.
Just casual?
Whenever a ceiling tile was taken out, they just looked up and see.
Oh, okay. Let's see. So you've sort of answered my next question, that you don't feel any additional inspections are necessary prior to the roof replacement to ensure that the metal decking is in integrity. Okay. Appreciate it. And then during Mr. Daigle's comments, there were a couple of other things that came up. I have a question about PCO 40, the 4-inch IMC to roof. Was that the $3,000 charge that you were talking about, Paul?
No, it was PCO 46.
Oh, okay.
So they had to do some additional attempted leak repairs above and beyond what was authorized in the contract.
Oh, okay. So for a layperson such as myself, a 4-inch IMC to the roof, what is that?
It's a metal conduit.
Oh, okay. Excellent.
I don't know what the I stands for, but the MC stands for.
That's all right. That's all right. I get the gist of it. Okay. And then the potential savings of the stove vent of $43,000.
Yeah.
I don't know where I noticed a line item for the $43,000.
Oh, it was PCO.
It's on here.
PCO 28.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, all set, Rich?
Yep.
Okay.
Should I give this over to Karen now, or just wait?
Sure, you're welcome to walk over and give it to her.
Should we leave Rocky up at the podium? Or?
I think so, until we go through, until we go through all of our questions. I think maybe we'll come down the line, and Mr. Birmingham, do you have any questions?
Not at this time, no.
Not at this time, okay. Peter?
Not on this.
Okay, not on this, so we'll have to come back around for...
Well, I'll let you, yeah.
Okay. Ann?
Okay, so I guess first kind of referring to Mr. Daigle, I agree that the roof needs to be replaced. I guess my concern is, has anybody, you said people inspected the roof casually. Has there been any official inspection by a vendor to say this is what's going on with the roof?
I'll let Rocky answer that.
That's why I was directed to him. I was just saying, I agree. You honed in.
Not since the design phase.
Not since the design phase, okay. My other concern is, when I took a tour with Rich Steele of the building, Chief Finkelstein did say that there was some mold, and you mentioned that it was removed. Was there an inspection done before it was removed to find the source, and how was it removed?
Fungicide.
And what does that entail? Is that
Like bleach.
bleaching it?
Yeah.
And after it was, when was that done, if you know?
Not really.
No? Okay. And
Recently.
The reason I'm asking, I didn't know then if it came back after that was done.
Before the building is occupied, it's going to be inspected. The whole building will be inspected.
Okay. Thank you. The other question I had, I think you're the one to answer it. In the back, when I was taking the tour last week with Chief Finkelstein, we went to the back of the building, and there was this huge drain pipe toward the housing development that looks like if water comes out, it's just going to pour into the public safety building. Do you know anything about that, or could you explain that?
No. News to me.
It's a conduit that's underneath the road into the new housing development that's on the east side of the public safety building. And it looks like it's something for drainage. Might be
It would be
mistaken.
illegal for anyone to take water and push it to another property, so I don't think it would be attached to a drainage system necessarily. It could be a conduit for wires to go across a road or something like that. Do you know anything about it?
No, I haven't been on the
Such a
other
thing?
property to look at the driveway, but if it is a surface water drainage system, once again, the town would have to interact with them if it would cause a problem. Using water on the adjoining property.
Well, yeah, because it looks like, the drainage pipe is up here, our building is down here,
Right.
and, water goes downhill.
That'd be an
Well,
inland
travel.
wetlands issue, and they can't transfer water from one property to another, so they haven't gotten their CO yet, so thank you for the tip. And they're anxious to get their CO, so we'll run out there tomorrow.
And it's easy to find. You just go where the
Yeah.
generator is and look east.
I've been there and done that, so, okay.
Thank you.
And you may have already answered this, but I can't remember. No, I guess you did answer that question. Okay, I don't have any other questions. Thank you very much.
Okay.
My pleasure.
Nancy and Toriel.
Thank you, Rocky. Thanks, Paul. I don't have any questions at this point. I also went to the Board of Selectmen meeting last week, which was very informative. And I have served on the Vision Committee, so a number of the topics are already familiar. But if I have any more, I'll jump in and ask them. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Rocky. We really appreciate your service to the town. Thank you so much. Okay.
If there's any question about, the integrity of the town building committee and the expertise that they have and how they get into a project and own it, you just saw it, off the top of his head.
Yeah.
He knows what's going on. He's there every day. And, I think there's 8 people on that town building committee, 7 or 8 people, and they're all just as knowledgeable. We have a good leader.
Okay, thank you. Do any of our board members have any other questions regarding this appropriation request that can be directed to Mr. Nickerson or Mr. Daigle? Or somebody else that you see in the audience that may be of help?
I guess my only comment would be, I understand that Noble Construction, I guess it would be directed to Mr. Daigle, or Mr. Nickerson, I'm not sure which one, so, has given the price of, I guess, what is it, $171,000 and change. It's just, we'll kind of estimate there. And I guess, just comparing it to the pool, they're going for 3 bids. Is there some reason that we wouldn't go out to bid and get some other bids? To me, it seems like we want to confirm that we're getting the best price and the best quality, and the only way to do that would be to go out and compare it to some other bids.
I'll try to answer it, you can clean it up. Rocky can. We're in the middle of a building project, so really we don't control the property right now. Ed Noble and Noble Construction does, and part of the contract with a developer who did bid on this project is to also take on change orders. And while we're upgrading what the plan of the roof was to a greater plan, it's a change order in the end. It's a project that we could decide not to do the roof, and we'll just spend some money on patching, and then go out and bid. But Ed Noble's going to have to leave the property and finish the property before we bring more contractors on site. That's how I understand it. Again, it's part of his job. It's part of what he bid on, was this project and any change orders that come as a result of this project, until he delivers the project to the town. And he's not prepared to deliver that. The town building committee voted, no, we want a change order to increase to improve the roof now, not 2 or 3 years from now. The 4 of you were at the meeting last week. We know it's an unfortunate thing. We know that they were off. The architects were on for about 98% of it. They were off on this one. And we took a gamble and we rolled the 7. So, that's how it goes. We're getting a better price now because they're staged. There's nobody in the building now. We don't have to clear the building out to put the roof on. We are getting a better insulated building with this. To answer your question specifically, though, I believe it's still under Noble Construction's responsibility, and they did deliver a decent price. We were expecting a $350,000 price. That's what the guesstimate was. But we talked offline, and those were allowances, and we found a lot of allowances. Right? We found a $700 coffee maker in those allowances, if you remember way back when. Right? So. Some are off, and some are higher, and some are lower. We're in a good place right now, and Ed Noble is going to guarantee that roof for 20 years, and we know that you can also extend the life of these roofs with a rubberized surface after you've gone and replaced them. So I suspect another 10 or 20 years beyond that.
I guess.
Mark, the only thing I
Yeah,
had to
clean
add
that.
is the $350,000 original estimate by the design contractor was for a 30-year roof. It wasn't for 20 years. So.
That was my next question. Yeah, that's what I figured it was.
For 10 years.
I guess my only issue, and I don't know if this is the time to say it, but basically to define the word change order, I think of, you put in a window, you put in a door, you change a wall. Putting in a roof, I mean, that was part of something in a capital improvement plan. So to do that on a change order, it just seems like that's a little weak, that it should go out to bid, that we should get at least one other bid to say this is how much it may be. You may not select them, but at least to see what the price would be from somebody else. I guess that's my only, difference. I think that, the roof is needed, and I'd like to see it done right. I feel that if we're going to do 20 years, maybe it's better just to do 30 years and get it done properly, so that in 15 years it doesn't start leaking, and then we're stuck with an IT room full of ruined equipment. So I just want to make sure it gets done right. So that's my concern. But thank you.
That was a sentiment of the town building committee too, is we want to get it done right, and we want to deliver a product. And in the end, why not deliver the finished product now instead of 2 or 3 years from now? We could go and spend some money on patching the roof, and we could get it passed with the CO, and we can get the building, we can get the people in there and the equipment in there and all that. And we know sooner than later, that roof is going to need to be replaced. The town building committee talked about it over several meetings, and they all agreed unanimously, let's do it now, let's deliver the right product. They do consider this as change order as part of the, they're taking it from here and they're going up with it, but we've had several other change orders in both the school project, some big change orders on that one, a lot more than 200,000. We're delivering, we're going to deliver finished product. so we can finally move on.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Questions, comments, concerns from the board?
Trying to figure out how to word this.
I would recommend carefully.
The about going out for bids. What I was on the committee that developed the purchasing policy, which had the 3-bid process, and so it makes sense to go out to bid. I'm not a lawyer. I don't understand contract, or I'm not a legal contract. So when you talk about change order and needing to vacate the like stop construction and bring a new contractor in, this is new information to me. So what I want to ensure is that we're doing it properly, because newsflash, there's been a lot of criticism of this project over the course of the project, and I want to make sure that we're doing it properly. If it's cumbersome and ill-advised to go out for 3 bids, I want to make sure that that's the correct decision. It's not that I have a strong feeling about one way or the other. I just want to make sure that we're following the process correctly, because there's a lot of scrutiny on this project. And I don't know enough to have an intelligent answer, so I want someone to have, I guess I want to know that that's the correct process. And,
It's a good question.
how do I do
I called Ann several times. I know you were part of that committee.
Yeah,
I talked to Ann about you being on that committee, and a few selectmen and all that. Ann did a majority of the authoring of that purchasing policy.
Right.
We talked at length about the different. First of all, it's a policy, not an ordinance, not a law.
Yeah, I know.
It's something to follow when possible. Now we have a building project that's, I think we're at 87% completed.
Right.
We're just trying to move in now. And do you stop the project, go out to bid, send Noble away, because you can't bring your own roof contractor in while he's in the middle of a thing. So get him to finish whatever he needs to finish, or get credit for the things he didn't finish, and then find someone who will. But there's also opportunities, and Ann, you can speak to this better than I can about the exclusions to the purchasing policy, and the number of ways we can declare an emergency or urgent need, etc.
Well,
Remind me.
yeah, thanks.
Remind us.
Okay, so just a sort of interesting point maybe for all is that change orders, are essentially exceptions in purchasing policies, because in theory everything in the world should be bid out. That's the perfect world we're supposed to try to live in. But in any event, change orders are definitely, or augmenting a contract, if that's another terminology for it. They're generally considered to be exceptions to your bid and quote requirements in a contract. So, for example, we have that in our purchasing policy. We have a section under augmentation of contract, in which we discuss change orders. We have a separate section on change orders, et cetera, et cetera. What I'm happy about with the policy, and I've looked at it 7 ways to Sunday, and yes, I did author quite a bit of the policy, so along with other colleagues, such as Peter. But basically, I'm really happy that the policy sets certain standards, and it also has some flexibility. And again, with exceptions, we have continuity of service exceptions. We've got, regional contracting exceptions. But it also, and there's a general waiver, in the event that you need to use that as well. So there's a built-in sort of procedure, if you will, even if you're getting a waiver, certain procedure, even if you're getting exceptions, certain procedure. So, and if I can jump ahead a step, in contemplating the situation, obviously we need to replace the roof. I think that's been well articulated both in the Board of Selectmen meeting and in this meeting. So I don't think we're of a different mind there. And I do think the policy, as we try to adhere to it, does offer us plenty of flexibility. So I think we're adhering to its principles. So I'm not worried about that. I think that the going back to need, my own concerns were, getting the police out of the building they're in, staying to the contractual time frame for this contract, because we really, time is of the essence. If we send Mr. Noble away, then he may not be coming back anytime too soon. If you're going off into a different realm of going out to bid packages, et cetera, and then coming back and having, someone else do the roof. It doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense to me. And remember that Mr. Noble was completely vetted as a general contractor. He, along with 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 other bidders, bid for the work. And so he's thoroughly vetted, he's bonded, insured, et cetera. And, I think the town building committee, did put their, did give the thumbs up once this became apparent that we needed to do this, and then to take his recommendation. And the subcontractor in question, and this is not the first subcontractor Mr. Noble is obviously using. Subs are used, in a number of places on this project. So this is his recommendation, and it seems quite sound. And I think, we've had some good questioning here and some detail. So, I feel confident about that, and I do feel confident about the purchasing policy and staying within the parameters of the policy.
Thank you for that.
Sure.
Yeah, you reminded me of a couple of the, as you were talking, I was remembering some of the processes about trying not to have it be a disruptive process and making exceptions for certain things, and I'm remembering that now as we discussed those. So thank you.
Okay, I suppose it's my turn to speak up. I've been listening very carefully to all of the comments and the questions. I want to really thank my board for, really doing their research, even, one-on-one with different people, trying to get their answers to their questions prior to this meeting to help it speed it along. I'll just say that I'm not that confident, and I'll explain why I'm not that confident in a few moments. But that opinion that I have is why I'm going to take a very careful and measured approach this evening. I do agree at this point in time that the roof needs to be replaced, and I'll explain why in a moment. First, let me address this issue with the bids. What we have before us is a change order proposal, right? It is a bid that came to us from our building contractor, and as it was explained to us previously this evening, these are not Noble construction employees. Noble went out to secure a bid from a subcontractor. So if you would choose to buy the argument that this capital project of $200,000 is acceptable as a change order, then I would suggest that Noble would go out and get 3 individual bids for us. That seems to me like it could be a logical solution. And I imagine, based on all of the work that they've done in the past, that's not a big ask. I'm sure they've worked with several roofing contractors and would be able to come up with 3 bids. I would also caution us to move forward on a 20-year roof. Why are we going to a 20-year roof now instead of a 30-year roof? We've said many, many times in the past, and I'm not going to rehash the entire history here tonight, but I am going to make a few important points about what has transpired up to this point. We have cautioned in the past, let's do this project right. We don't want you to come back to us several times for additional appropriations for things that rightly should have been included in the beginning of this project, right? So this is another example of where I think we're making a wrong turn by going with this single proposal for a 20-year roof. Let me back, so just so we're straight, I am not anti-police. I am definitely in favor of replacing this roof, but what I am not in favor of is moving our police from one mold-infested building to another, right? So I am not going to move forward quickly this evening until a number of concerns are addressed properly and thoroughly. So let me back up and say, 1 year ago, in June, the architects Silver Petrocelli they were quoted in the Day newspaper article. This is June 2020. And I think I have a direct quote here. They said, June 2020, the roof's life can be significantly extended by 10 years or more with patching and repairs planned as part of the $7.17 million estimate. Okay, 10 years or more with the $600 budget that we had for a few single shingles and some tar. Okay, that was 1 year ago. I believe that the voters of East Lyme went to referendum counting on the expertise of the hired architect to base their voting decision on, right? 3 months before, 2 or 3 months before the referendum, they were told for this amount of money, we'll get this product, right? And we know that the roof is going to last 10 years. Before we went to referendum, I cautioned the voters of East Lyme that we were not so far down the rabbit hole that we couldn't, and I said this online, I'm on record, we're not so far down the rabbit hole that we can't sell this building, and since we got it for such a good deal, and go back to square one and design a new building that could be built in a better location a couple years down the road for $9 or $10 million. At the time, I said, yes, we appropriated $5 million, and then you came and asked us for an additional 2.1, right? So now we're up to $7.2 million. I said, in 3 to 5 years, we're going to end up spending $8 to $9 million on this building, right? And it's still not going to be the quality product that we would have had if we had built new. I think that the voters took those words seriously, because what happened with the original appropriation request of $5 million that they voted on, there was a 64% approval rating on the project. By the time that they were voting on a $1.2 million FEMA allocation to this project and an additional $985,000 bonding appropriation, the favorability of the project really plummeted to 52 and 54% on each one of those appropriations. So it just barely passed after cautioning them that you guys would be back for more money. So that is another reason why the voters have spoken. We need to honor their vote. And now with the recent inspection of this building, not inspection, that's a poor choice of words for me. With the tour of this building last week that I took, I noticed that the detention cells were built out. There's no way that this building could be put on the market today and used as a viable commercial space for anybody. So now we are too far down the rabbit hole. We have to move forward. But we are going to move forward with caution, and I hope my board agrees with me very carefully. When I met at the Public Safety Building, I had a meeting with Mr. Daigle, who explained the need for the $200,000 for the roof and other expenses. And I also asked Mr. Nickerson and Chief Finkelstein to join us. And so we had a long conversation about what we needed. And we talked first about the need, and I agreed. And then the question came, how are we going to pay for this? I thought that Mr. Nickerson and I had an understanding of how that would be paid for. At first, it was proposed that additional FEMA money would be used, and I said absolutely not. The people have spoken. We've already said $1.2 million was targeted for this project from the FEMA funds that we received from storms Irene and Sandy, and we were not. I was not prepared to give any more FEMA funds for this particular project. Then I looked on the project detail that the finance director had submitted to us and noticed that $530,000 was added to the project total. So this $7.2 million project went from 7.2 to 7.7 or 8 on paper, and I'm saying, what is this $530,000? Then it was explained to me that those are bond premium funds, and after going to market, and perhaps, I don't know what the correct term is, refinancing the bonds, getting a better rate on these funds. This would be money that would be refunded to our town as a result of better negotiation on bonding obligations. And so I thought we had an agreement, Mr. Nickerson, that we were going to use those premium bond funds to pay for this project. And yet at the selectmen meeting last week, it was suggested that we use ARP funds. I am against using ARP funds for this project. The information that was submitted to us 2 weeks ago, which I read in great detail, did not specify that capital projects were an allowable expense for the ARP. The money is intended really solely for COVID relief. I understand in our packets this evening that there is a letter from our attorneys. We have not had time to review that rather lengthy letter. We are not prepared to do that tonight.
It's a page and a half.
Excuse me, I'm not finished,
I know, but
Mr.
it's a page and a half. You could take a 3-minute break.
Mr. Nickerson, I am not finished.
I know. I'm writing it down.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So, the use of funds is something that I take exception to, how this will be paid for. So for those reasons, I am not ready to move forward this evening. What I would like to see, and now I think that you can get a picture of why I want to move carefully and very measured. I want to take a measured approach to this. Because during my tour, I was the one that noticed the spores on the lower walls of the first floor, and I pointed that out. I think you had already left, the meeting at that point. And I pointed that out to Chief Finkelstein, and he had not seen that before. To me, it looked like the spores had been bleached and painted over. So right away, that caused me concern. I didn't know at this point about this drainage pipe that was leading directly to the public safety building from a neighboring property. So that causes me greater concern by moving forward tonight, learning of that tonight. We don't even know what the source of that mold and mildew is, and yet we're pushing forward. So what I would expect to happen before you would receive my personal approval as a member of this board is a top-down building inspection from a third party, somebody that's not related to this project at all. I'm talking from the roof to the basement. I don't care if it costs $2,000 or $3,000, whatever it costs, you find the money, you give us that inspection that says that this building will be safe for our police to move into. And 3, I'm going to insist on 3 bids for that roof. I have no confidence that that's the right solution at this point because I have nothing to which I can base it upon. Now, we have been very accommodating over the past 5 years in granting you special meetings such as this evening so that you can move fast and you can make good progress on this project. We are prepared to call another special meeting when that information request has been satisfied. We're happy to do that. And that's what I will be holding out for this evening. I hope my fellow board members agree with me, but we do have 6 votes here, and we will see what happens. That's my statement. Thank you for your patience in listening to me, as always. And if there's any comments from any other board
Well, I'll
member?
answer some of your comments. I'd be happy to as ex officio. Obviously, a well-rehearsed campaign speech. No doubt about it. It's ridiculous, and for you to go through this. I mean, we had plenty of opportunity to talk about this before the meeting. For you to drop it here with the cameras, it's well timed, Camille. You called it your board. Again, I spoke to you last week. You're all equals. In fact, I won't go there about the number of votes you all received on the last election, but you're all equals now that you're seated. It's not your board. Keep that in mind. You called it a mold-infested building. You just got testimony from Rocky, who's out there every day. It's not a mold-infested building. They've already removed the mold that's there. He's also told you that he's going to have a full inspection before we receive the building from Noble Construction. I just want to clear up some of the details there. You have a letter from the attorney. You could take a 3-minute break. I think it's a page and a half. Basically, the bottom line is you can use it. There's a number of reasons why you could use it for the public safety building. And while we agreed that we could use premium dollars, it was the board's decision, because I don't run the board. 6 people vote on the Board of Selectmen. I don't speak for them or answer to them, that they chose to use ARP money, which is money coming from the federal government that we can use for this, that would not carry interest rates for the next 20 years, and would be an allowable use on a public safety building with an emergency operations center in there, and a number of other items. And you can read that letter. I guess it's going to take you a while to read that, but it is allowed. The charter calls for you to act within 30 days when the selectmen act. You're not granting me special meetings. You're granting me a favor. You're doing the business of the town. So the tone was a little off, Camille. I'm sorry.
Any further questions, comments from the board this evening?
I do.
Yes, John?
I agree with some of my other board members that want a finished product, a good finished product. But and I agree with Camille on some points, but I don't agree with her on some other points. And one of the points is that the building is mold infested. And Santora and I went on a tour last week, and I saw the 2 rooms that supposedly have mold. Well, one of them was mildew, because the air conditioning was shut down for a period of time, and it was the temperature at the time outside was hot, it was humid, so there was some mildew on the wall. How do you tell the difference between mold and mildew? Mold can be black, dark brown, green, and it penetrates into the sheetrock or the walls or wherever it is, and it's rough, it's slimy, it's has black spots where it is, as opposed to mildew, which stays on the surface, and it's usually white or light gray. And when you rub your hand over it, it comes off on your hand like baby powder, I'm going to say. And I did this in that one room that had sheetrock on it, that I was told this is where the mold is. But it was just my opinion that it wasn't mold, it was mildew. I've had some experience with mold in some of my properties I had over the years, so I know what mold looks like. The other thing I don't agree with is her talking about what it cost initially when we were running through the cost of the public safety building. We all knew at the time that it was going to cost at least $6 million, maybe $7. We tried to pass $6 million, but it didn't pass, so we ended up with 5. So what happened? We ended up getting $6 million later, and as we all expected, or maybe not all of us, but some of us knew that $7 million figure was going to come up sooner or later, which it did. The problem with the roofs, especially flat roofs, are problematic. There's half a dozen reasons why they leak. If you patch your roof here, the water will travel and come out somewhere else as a leak. So you can patch all you want, and the possibility is you're going to have another leak somewhere. Now, to get several bids, that's all well and good. Problem is, to me, is that how long is this going to take for Noble, well, when he's told to go out and get 3 bids? And to get 3 bids, are you going to have 3 contractors that are not busy to even give a bid or do the work because of COVID? I know I wanted some work done recently, and I couldn't find a contractor because they're all tied up. Everybody's doing work on their houses or on their businesses. So I don't know if we can even get 3 bids. Maybe we could get 1 or 2, but we have a solid bid here. It's $171,000, give or take, which was originally $360,000. So the company that Noble picked, as far as I can tell, is reliable. My own opinion is to go with them. I can't see wasting any more time with trying to get bids and to fix the roof. That has to be done right away. Because the longer it takes to fix the roof, the more time it's going to take for us to get the police into the station. And they should get out of the building they're in now, which is mold infested. So Mr. O'Connor has assured us that the mold / mildew has been taken care of. So my vote would be to pass this, get it done, and get the police into a new station. And as far as the attorney that wrote how we can use the money, before I even saw the letter, I looked at some of the recommendations by the CCM, the Connecticut Congress of Municipalities. And they say we can use the funds only because of it's a health and safety issue, which it is. So that combined with a letter from our attorney, there's no reason why we can't use the op funds for this. We have 2 years to use what? How much money, Mr. Selectman?
$5,400,000.
So we have to the end of
4
2024?
years to identify it, 6 years to spend it, something crazy like that.
Yeah. So it's an honest way to use the funds, $200,000 out of $2 or $3 million. I don't see the reason to delay it anymore.
To your point, you could approve the $200,000 with a stipulation that Ed Noble gets 2 other bids to be no greater than $171,000, whatever that number is on the front page. And then you get your.
Do you have any idea how long getting bids would be?
If you can get bids, like your point is,
Yeah.
he's busy. He's got somebody who's ready to go, who'll come in next Thursday,
Yeah.
day after the town meeting, assuming it gets approved.
Okay. Those are my comments.
Thank you, John. Anybody else?
I would just like to say I agree with quite a few of the points of Mr. Birmingham. You know, starting with issues about the pricing or the getting in our first referendum, our 5 million versus 6 million. I think that is, we have all retread on that one. We've discussed that 7 Ways to Sunday, but we came to an impasse, and I think that has to be re-emphasized, lest there be a new and different narrative out there. We came to an impasse as a board that night, and we had to do something, and 5 million was a solution, and to allow the project to go forward. The stipulation with that 5 million was it did not include the cells, and certainly did not contemplate an elevator and a number of other items. I actually wrote a memo on that in our July 2020 meeting about that, and I'm actually going to provide a copy to our recording secretary, because it goes through how we got from 5 to 6 to 7.2, and it might be just helpful again. So that being said, that's for me history. But I would like also tonight, if we don't take a 3-minute break, to read out loud perhaps the opinion of our counsel from Tracy Collins concerning the use of ARP funds. Last week or so, Anna had given us the toolkit provided by CCM, which is a guidepost. I mean, the way to really understand how you can use the ARP funding is to spend countless hours, if you have it, reading the Treasury regulations. It's unrealistic. So for all municipalities and people that serve on these boards and commissions. So we get this packet, and it outlines reasonably well, clearly we are not, this is not a use that's prohibited. We're not trying to use it for tax purposes, to fund a pension plan, to pay down debt. So, we're not in that neck of the woods of using ARP funds. So I think it's a good use, and we could, again, read this into the record, which would be a good idea this evening, the opinion from Ms. Collins. And I would just like to emphasize again, I did go on that tour last Friday afternoon with Mr. Birmingham, and Chief gave us a very great tour. That day there were fewer workers, so there were some painters, a couple of others, so we kind of had the place to ourselves, and we could really get a good view, a good hour tour. And it really struck me, and I really want to emphasize this point, how well suited the building is for the way it has now been repurposed. Going into the evidence room, and I asked the chief, I said, well, I see cement walls here, and I recall that, this was a feature of the building that would come in good use, and it certainly did, because the structure already existed, for having to store evidence of weapons, evidence of drugs, et cetera, et cetera. Looking at the sally port, looking at the cells. I mean, you could not have designed that better in a way with a new building. It's perfectly suited. So, and I was very impressed with the work of Mr. Noble. At this point, it's 87% done, and I think so far, so good. So, something to keep in mind. Ms. Cacello had phoned me the morning prior to our going, because there was an issue that had come up with respect to mold/mildew on her tour. And so Mr. Birmingham and I asked Chief, what has been your damage? What has been your damage from the leakage that's happened so far? And his response was ceiling tiles on second floor. And then we specifically asked him about mold and mildew, and he seemed nonplussed by it, because he just looked at it as a construction site issue. AC has gone off, we have some mildew, it's kind of, and if I'm phrasing, properly, rephrasing what he said, kind of like the mildew that you can get in your garage, and the contractor is taking care of it. So, that was not some sort of monumental issue for me. On that topic, as Rocky has said, Town Building Committee Chair, this project will be completely reviewed, will be completely inspected. You can't get the CO. You can't move in until you have your final inspections. So, and I think that's the appropriate time to do all of that. And along the way, if you as a building committee encounter issues, you'll have to deal with the contractor with it. I think it's not in our lane to be overly concerned about that topic at this point. I'm sorry, I just think our focus should be, is this, basically appropriating money and finding, and coming to financial decisions, and not necessarily being overly concerned about that. So, for me, I'm also concerned about the stretch of time that going out to bid, separate and apart from Mr. Noble, would take. I like Mr. Nickerson's suggestion that, we could ask him for some additional information, additional bids, something like that. I think that's a solution to our situation, perhaps. But again, I feel that he's been vetted. He's done a good job. I have nothing in evidence for me that tells me, oh my God, gotta go get more bids on this issue of the roof. I just don't, I think anything is speculative. I heard an awful lot of speculative information tonight, and I take offense at it. Thank you.
Of course. All right, thank you, Ann. Since you had brought it up, I think I need to elaborate a little bit about the original $5 million motion that we made that was approved back in January of 2019. We had no detailed information whatsoever by which we could base a decision. We were told by the first selectman at the time that $1 million of the $6 million project was specifically for detention cells and a sally port. And we said, we know you need some money to start the project. We're willing to let it move forward, to let the voters decide at a referendum, but let's give you $5 million up front to get started. And when you figure out the exact cost of the detention cells and the sally port, come back to us and we will make that appropriation if that's deemed advisable. I would say that that was a great decision on our board's part, because the cost of the detention cells and the sally port came back at $700,000, right? $300,000 may be chump change to some people, but I would say to our taxpayers, that makes a significant difference. $300,000 here, $200,000 there, it adds up. We made the right decision. Unfortunately, coming back to the well was a recurring instance, and 700 was not the stopping point. They came back for 2.1. So I'm not saying that I'm not prepared to move forward. I am, but I think I'm asking for a very reasonable suggestion, not just to change the way in which we will fund this project. That is one, but three of the conditions that I presented this evening before I personally was able to move forward. 1 out of 3 was the source of funding. Let me repeat, the other information that I would like to see before this board votes or moves forward are 3 bids on a roof, because I'm not convinced that a 20-year roof is the proper way to go. We're shortchanging our taxpayers once again on a quality product. And 2, I would like to see a roof-to-ceiling building inspection before we appropriate another dollar to this project. I think our taxpayers deserve that. And I'm not willing to move forward on a wing and a prayer that we'll see that at some point in the future. I've just, I've lost my confidence. So that's...
Well, you're not gonna get anything but the American Rescue Fund to fund this. That's what was forwarded to you. If you remember, you don't get to decide that. It comes from the Board of Selectmen. It's an active building project. I don't think it's appropriate to inspect the building at this stage at 87% done. It should be 100% done, and then you go through it and you inspect the building. So I differ in opinion with you. And I'm going to throw it out there. Last week we heard from your friend Lisa about how we should never have bought the building, and we should have been an inspection before you bought the building, and you should have negotiated a better price. But you made the initial motion. And Lisa seconded the motion to buy the building in the first place. So, we're pointing fingers 2.5 years later about how bad this project is, when it was really dead, and you brought it back to life with the motion. And I'm not pointing fingers back at you, I just did, sorry. My grandmother would cut my finger off. But listen, there's blames that spread all around. That project would have died that night. Again, without your motion and without Lisa's second, that project, we would have been down the road somewhere else. We would have been patching that roof on Main Street. and spending good money after bad. That's the facts. So
That
so
is
here
the
we
fact. That is the fact.
So
And
here
if
we
you,
are. I gotta
and
get
if
that
you
out there.
remember, and if you remember on a paper that I wrote, a position statement, I said that was my biggest regret ever that evening
Are
after
your last
that.
campaign?
Excuse me,
Your
sir?
last campaign? Your
I think
position
you were
paper?
I think you were way out of line.
Camille,
by-
what do you mean by a position paper? How are you as a member of the Board of Finance writing a position?
I said that that was my greatest regret that I made that motion that evening. I owned up to my mistake.
Okay.
All right? That's what I'm talking about. I said I made a mistake. I was trying to throw a Hail Mary pass so that we could get this forward before the voters because we were assured many times by you that you could get this project done for $5 million, and we were pressured many times into saying, this is a decision bigger than this board. Let's let the people decide. We were trying to accommodate you. I trusted you at that point. I'm sorry I don't any longer.
That's well and fine, Camille. I obviously don't trust you either. We know that. We know there's a lot of bad blood. It was a campaign issue 2 years ago, and it's becoming one again. We're stretching this timeline out so we can get a little closer to November. I think you have a building that has a leaky roof. We're 87% done. We should fix this roof with American Rescue funds that have been handed to us by the government. It's a right use for those funds. It's improved use. If you want Ed Noble to get 2 other bids, if something perhaps comes in lower, we'll go with that and save the taxpayers. They deserve to save a couple $100,000, probably $20,000 maybe on this particular issue, and move on and get the project done and not make it an issue, whether it's on Facebook or in a campaign brochure or in this commission for the next 2 or 3 months. Because the other option, I'm going to pull Rocky and Paul in the next room after you voted on this tonight, is if without the 200,000, we're going to have to deliver the building as is with patched roofs, and we'll shore up the electronics room with and there's ways to do that internally to make sure no leaks go into that building, and move forward, and then we'll as a town go out for 3 contracts for the roof repair. In 3 months, 6 months, a year from now, whatever. So
I would maintain that you don't have to do it that way. That would be your choice. Okay, so
if you
let's,
don't approve the 200,000 and you want to make this linger for another couple months,
that would be your choice. Okay.
town building choice actually.
Are
It's
there
not my
any-
choice or yours.
I'm going to call for any further comments from this board, or questions. If there's anything that we haven't covered already this evening, new information that you would like to share, questions that you would have, now is the time to do that.
Well, I just did, if we're not going to take the time to individually read this, or I'd actually like to read this barely a page plus opinion into the record if I could.
Yes, you can.
Okay.
That's perfectly fine with me.
This is a memo from Tracy Collins to Mark Nickerson, dated today, July 27, 21. Dear Mr. Nickerson, on July 23, 2021, we issued an opinion that the appropriations recommended by the Board of Selectmen on July 7, 21 met the eligibility requirements of the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, also known as ARPA. Thereafter, you requested our advice regarding whether the proposed appropriation to replace the public safety building roof recommended by the Board of Selectmen on July 21st meets the eligibility requirements of ARPA. Please consider this email a supplement to that letter. For the reasons that follow, it is our advice that the appropriation for the replacement of the public safety building roof recommended by the Board of Selectmen also falls under the first of ARP's permissive uses listed in our July 23rd letter as the town's response to public health and economic impacts of COVID-19. As stated therein, to assess whether a program or service falls within that category, the U.S. Treasury Department's interim final rule recommends that government officials should first identify a need or negative impact of the COVID-19 health emergency, and then identify how the program, service, or other intervention addresses the identified need or impact. With these principles in mind, the following is an analysis of the roof replacement at the Public Safety Building. On July 14, 2021, the U.S. Treasury issued responses to frequently asked questions regarding the uses of funds. Question and answer 2.1 provides that eligible uses for the funds include, quote, public communication efforts and quote, capital investments in public facilities and buildings to implement COVID-19 mitigation tactics, unquote. The frequently asked question responses also provide that the ARPA funds can be used to support communities working to reduce and respond to increased violence due to the pandemic. The expenditures may include hiring of law enforcement officials, even above pre-pandemic levels, community violence intervention programs, and additional enforcement to reduce violence. It is our understanding that the Public Safety Building will operate as the town's emergency management headquarters for the police department, dispatch, and emergency management personnel. It is vital that our police officers, dispatchers, and emergency management personnel operate in one fully functioning central location in order to properly respond both to the public health emergency and increased violence due to COVID-19. We are also assuming that the building will be used to support the town's general response to COVID-19 for public awareness and as an option for a COVID vaccine site in the event it is needed. If you have any questions, please contact us. Thank you, Tracy Collins. I'd just like to add something that, it's begun to be emphasized in that letter is that let's take maybe a 30,000-foot view here for a minute. We're talking about a public safety issue. The housing of our police, our fire marshal, our dispatchers, and emergency management. Okay, those are the offices in that building to be, okay? I mean, I really believe that we can't delay this much longer. And to dovetail on something Mr. Birmingham brought up, if we go through another season, I don't know that we can keep our police in the building they're in and potentially incur additional expenses of finding some place to house them that is better suited. So that's a looming issue. It's been a looming issue. I think we have something in our hands right now that is a solution to a problem that none of us wanted, trust me. And so both with the fact that we're using ARP funding, which doesn't require direct taxpayer dollars, and again, as we've mentioned, that we have our general contractor on the job and giving us this quote, so which our architects have reviewed and the building committee in their wisdom has reviewed. So I don't want to be second guessing them. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Ann. Anybody else?
I just have one final comment.
Of course.
There's been a lot of different comments about the roof in the public safety building. The job of the Board of Finance is to determine whether the town can afford any capital improvements or whatever. The federal government is handing us through ARP a few $1 million for different projects in town. We're using out of that $2 or $3 million, $200,000 to fix the roof so we can get the police into the building. So the only question to me is, can the town afford it? Certainly we can afford it because the federal government is helping us afford it. I mean, you may not like, the building contractor's work for whatever reason, but that's not the issue. The issue is, can we afford it? And the answer is yes. So we should move forward and appropriate this $200,000.
I actually agree with you, John. We can afford it, but I also think we can afford more. I think we can afford to provide a 30-year roof on that building so that we don't have to revisit this in our generation.
So the question is then, if you want several bids, how fast can we get them? And how long are you willing to wait to get them?
It's not a question of whether I'm willing to wait or not. It's, you know, we have been very accommodating in calling special meetings to make sure that when the information is presented to us, that we can react to that pretty quickly. I think we have a good history of doing that, and I think we're prepared to do that again. So you're asking me, am I willing to wait on an unknown factor? I don't know what that factor is. I mean, I'm not going to say here and we can get that information in 1 week or 10 weeks. I have no idea. That's not our role. I would think that if it's an emergency, that our administration would work very diligently to make sure that that gets done in a speedy fashion.
I don't think it's the role of the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance to decide or challenge the decision-making of the Town Building Committee who's on this site and making decisions on this building. They approved this roof contract. We moved it to you through the Board of Selectmen. It's a 20-year roof.
Okay.
It's a $170,000 project. It is what it is.
And did you have
it's an up or
something
down.
to add?
I just wanted to say that I guess my holdout is that I would want to see, you know, I thought Camille had a great idea actually to have no construction so that they can stay on the premises, get 2 other subcontractors in to give a bid. I think that's just reasonable. You know, I know there's, you know, exceptions in the purchasing policy, but I think given the history, and I'm certainly not going to go back on that, that it's something that should be done. So that's my opinion on this.
I'd like to, oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'd like to poll our members to see if you believe that it's worth exploring a 30-year roof on new bids that come in. Is our town worth an extra 10 years on the life of a roof for our police officers? I just like to poll everybody, because it's fine if we say go back and get 3 bids, you know, ask Noble to go back and get 3 bids, but what are we asking them to do, 20 or 30 years? We've already said we can afford a 30-year roof. We've identified several areas with which we could use the funds to make that happen. Where does this board stand on 20 versus 30 year?
I would prefer a 30-year roof, or what we could do is get bids for a 20-year and a 30-year. But I think that a longer-lasting roof is better. You could, you know, if we can get it to last, because otherwise, when you're saying a 20-year roof, that might end up being 15 years.
It's guaranteed for 20 years. It's guaranteed.
I know, but I'm just
Contractor
saying
stands
that,
up
you know,
for it.
it's,
Guaranteed. 20 years. It's not 15.
yeah, but, you know, I don't want to say anything, but, you know, Silvio Petroselli did say, you know, it would last 10 years. So, you know, it's not the contractor, it just, you know, things
We have
happen.
a warranty on the roof.
You know?
It's not an opinion from the architect. It's a 20-year roof with a warranty. We
Yeah.
get them on our buildings all over town.
Okay, thank you.
So I'd like to,
That 20-year
Sure.
warranty, if I may,
sure.
this 20-year warranty is guaranteed by the manufacturer, not the installer. The manufacturer will inspect the installation of the roof, and the manufacturer guarantees it. Not Noble, not American, Premier Building. Just want to make that clear. So 20 years is not a guesstimate. It's a certified warranty by the manufacturer. Just want to make sure that that's clearly understood by everybody.
But wouldn't it be better, you know, I'm just thinking, if we put more money in now and got a 30-year roof versus now that we have the funds, versus, you know, maybe in 20 years, the funds won't be, you know, there won't be any ARF funds. Do you know what I mean? So if we have the funds now, it might be more prudent to look at getting a 30-year roof. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, I'd like to hear from the rest of the members on the 20 versus 30.
Well, it's common sense to say we all would like a 30-year roof. But suppose we get bids on a 30-year roof and it comes to $375,000. So now we have a 20-year roof for 171 plus or minus, 30-year roof for 375. It may take 2 months for the contractor to start work. Which way are you going to go? That's my concern. It's $200,000 for $171,000 now. 30-year roof for, I'm just throwing a number out, for 375, a couple more months, maybe longer. So that's my concern.
Well,
I
would
would
you
like a
start the
30-year
work?
roof, but, you know, is it logical to go that way?
Peter,
I don't know enough about the difference between a 20-year roof and a 30-year roof to really speak intelligently about it.
Rocky's got his hand up.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
The difference between a 20-year roof and a 30-year roof is the thickness of the PVC coating. Everything else is the same.
thank you, Rocky.
So would it take the same time, do you know, to,
Sorry, I can't.
I'm sorry, excuse me. Is it a lot more time intensive to put on a 30-year roof versus a 20-year roof?
A little bit, not much.
Not much, okay, thank you.
If you would prefer, we could get a price from Noble on a 30-year roof. But the question is, you said it's 87% complete. That was on June 30th. It's now probably 95% complete. We only have 2 people working
No,
because we can't put the communications equipment in until the roof is complete.
yeah, exactly.
So the expediency is what I'm looking for. So I don't like this job. I want it done.
Thank you for your
Understand.
candor.
Well said.
I think too, Ann, in this proposal, there's added insulation, and the insulation is beefed up to be an R30, which I assume, Mr. Daigle, you could answer that, or Rocky, you could answer that, to be of better than usual quality, and to provide, and will give lots of insulation such that it'll cut down on your AC cost, it'll cut down on heating costs, so it's a good thing. You know, I was impressed with that aspect of that proposal.
I'll just correct a little bit.
Okay, go ahead.
It's not better than usual, it's code requirement now.
Okay,
It meets code.
thank you, thank you.
It will
Okay.
improve insulation on the building.
Yes, okay, thanks, yeah.
I am in favor of having Noble get the additional bids just to assure that we're following protocol. And, you know, I appreciate your comments about the purchasing policy.
Yeah,
and,
it
you
was
know,
a little trip down memory lane, right, Peter?
And maybe in there we can get more information about the 20 versus 30-year roof. I don't know enough about it to have a strong opinion at this point. Except the roof of my house is hitting 20 years, and I'm hoping to get another 10 out of it.
So there's 2 choices we have this evening. We can choose not to make a motion on this and table it for another meeting, or we can move forward and make a motion, have it seconded, and take a vote. If we vote and it goes down, then the Board of Selectmen will have to regroup, reformulate, and come back to us with a different proposal.
Camille, can
Yes.
I
You
ask
would anyway.
Mr. O'Connor a question? With the schools, I understand that there were some roofs put on the schools, and I'm wondering, did we go with 20 or 30-year roofs for the schools?
If my recollection is correct, it was
20-year?
20-year.
Okay. And other municipal projects, have we generally gone with 20-year roof jobs? Have there been
As
other?
far as I know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't remember ever putting a 30-year roof on.
Oh, okay.
But because I don't really think I'm going to be around in 20 years, so I don't care.
Thank you for your honesty. I'm like Peter. I don't know enough about roofing. I think, 30 always sounds better than 20, but if our other municipal buildings have been 20-year roofs put on, and we've got the contractor and the sub in place, and from my understanding of what Ms. Santoro had mentioned in terms of the flexibility built in to the purchasing documentation, we've trusted Noble with the subbing out of various components of this project. And granted, it's a big change order, a $200,000 change order, or $171,000. But it does sound from the answers that I had gotten from the questions that I had asked that it does fall under the category of a change order, and it does fall under the flexibility of our purchasing documentation. I don't know enough about the building trades to weigh in on the justification of one versus another, but as Mr. O'Connor had just mentioned, our other municipal roofs have been 20-year roofs. And yeah, 30 sounds great, but if we've gone with 20 with the other projects and the town has approved those, I say for expediency, we put the motion forward, and you can vote against it or you can vote for it.
Anybody else? Well, I would think that if even one of our board members wants to make the motion, they are certainly entitled to do that. So if we're at that point, I will ask our board members if somebody would like to make a motion on a $200,000 appropriation request for the public safety building roof replacement and other expenses in the amount of $200,000 to be paid for through the American Rescue Plan funds.
Also move, we move that a special appropriation in the amount of $200,000 for the planning, design, acquisition, construction, equipping, and furnishing of the public safety building to specifically include roof replacement. The source of funds, being American Rescue Plan funding, is hereby adopted and recommended for approval by the legal voters of the town at a special town meeting.
Thank you, Ann. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, John. Is there any further discussion? If there's no further further.
The three bid thing, is that just expected, or is that what is Noble doing?
Depends on the vote.
It's not included in that.
We don't think it's required part of
Yeah.
the purchasing plan. We can edit, it's not typical of a contractor to go out when he's finding his subs to go get 3 contracts. But we can ask him to do it,
Okay.
whether he has 3 contacts to go out and get that.
Right, I
if
understand that
work is
the market
available
is not in the
to
favor.
start in a week
Yeah.
and all that. I mean, there's a lot to do that. You know,
Okay.
he obviously works with Ed Noble, this premier guy, and he's a trusted source. So whether that's the 3 bids come back or not, they would go back to the building committee, of course,
Yeah.
not to you folks.
Right.
And the building committee would forward the board of selectmen one. So 3 may have already been done. Ed may have called around. He knew we were on a tight budget.
Okay.
He got the best price for us, so.
So with that, there is a motion on the floor. We must vote on that motion. If it's not worded in a manner that you feel comfortable with, Peter, you can vote it down, and you can make a second motion if that's what you desire.
Okay.
Okay. So, any further discussion? Okay, hearing no further discussion, I'll call for the vote. All those members in favor of approving the appropriation as read by Ms. Santoro, please do so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. So, we have Richard Steele, John Birmingham, Peter DeRosa, and Ann Santoro. 4. All those against, please say nay.
Nay.
Nay. Ann Chichello and Camille Alberti. Okay, motion carries 4-0. Thank you, everyone.
No. Oh, two, oh, you said 2. I thought you meant 2, T-O.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, 4-2-0. Mr. Nickerson, you may want to stick around because there's some more appropriation requests that you might. All right, with that, why don't we all take a 5-minute break? We have 1, 2, 3, 4 more items this evening to address. John, can you turn off the camera during the break?
And I'm like, I need a seamstress.
No, we're recording, it's just,
Interesting family.
Okay, we're recording?
I miss him terribly. This is a sad year for me, 20 years.
Okay. Welcome back, everyone. We are continuing the July 28th, 2021 special meeting of the Board of Finance. Next up on our agenda is a transfer of FEMA funds to CNRE in the amount of $175,466. Anna, would you like to address the board on that one, please?
Okay, so, during the fiscal year ended 6/30/21, we received final payment from FEMA for storms Irene and Sandy relative to the boardwalk. 800 and some odd thousand on each of the projects. A portion of it, $1.2 million, we appropriated for the public safety building. And the remaining portion we had put into our general fund contingency. During the course of the year, we appropriated, I believe it was $151,000 for the police body cameras. And this is the remaining portion, $175,446. We had it in the general fund contingency account. So this is really requesting to transfer out of the general fund into CNRE Fund 32, into the, townwide project account. Because the CNRE fund rolls over from year to year, whereas the general fund lapses at the end of the fiscal year. So this will be putting it into that fund until such time as we go through the appropriations process. I had made notes. A few of the things that had been on the table for possible uses of these funds were the body cameras, sidewalks, money to go to.
Boardwalk funding.
Yeah, but
That's the question.
Sorry.
I wanted to say something to her.
Oh, the East Lyme Public Trust, thank you, yes. So those are just ideas that were, discussed. So anyway, we just dealt with one item, which was the police body camera.
Right.
So the request, as I said, is to move the remaining balance to the CNRE fund.
So I'd just like to provide a little additional detail to that. The original FEMA funds that we received totaled over $1.7 million. As you pointed out, 1.2 was designated to go toward the public safety building, $151,601 toward police body cameras. That was for year one of 2 years worth of expenses,
Yes.
from what I recall. So this board can expect to see an additional appropriation for police body cameras. Again, this represents one of 2 years. In addition to that, we had $203,561 that we used of those FEMA funds to cover prior expenses, that's why we are down to the balance of $175,446. The issue that I have is the commingling of funds. And now that we've done that, I just want to be very careful that we don't lose the visibility of those items that you mentioned tonight. In addition to the things you mentioned, I'm not sure if you said that the sidewalk capital fund, maybe year 2 of body cameras, not sure. Anything to go towards additional COVID-19 expenses, contribution to an open space fund. I'm saying this again for the record because as the new board moves into place next year, these are things that need to be considered. Pretty much that's what I had. And of course, the $50,000 from the East Lyme Public Trust Foundation that was not approved by, a specific request was not approved by the Board of Selectmen. And I think that's really important to keep in mind because that's kind of what the spirit of the FEMA funds were intended for. So at some point, I would hope that this Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance would move the $50,000 forward. Note that it would be coming from this contingency account, not a designated FEMA account because that no longer exists. Excuse me. Okay. Anybody have any questions on that transfer request? If there's no questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve a transfer in the amount of $175,446 to CNRE Fund 32, account 3270-300-500-999, townwide projects. The source of funds is general fund account 0101-120-200-500 contingency. The remaining balance of FEMA funds. Note, a town meeting is required.
Thank you, Ann. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, John. Any further discussion? Okay. Hearing no further discussion, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, please say aye. 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 Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries 600. Thank you. Moving on to item 4E. This is a carryover of a retirement reserve in the amount of $180,449. Anna?
Okay, so within our general fund, we do budget for a retirement reserve in a townwide department. And the purpose of this is in the event we have employees retire, it would be wonderful if they gave us notice as to when they're going to do this so we could plan for it in the budget, but it just doesn't happen that way. At the end, our liability at the end of each year is typically in excess of $1 million relative to employees. If they left, it's referred to as unfunded liabilities. And so we started funding for this in the general fund so that we would have a source. So we have been each year carrying over that remaining balance in addition to what we budget in the new year to kind of build it up. So with this carryover, that would bring us up to a little over $300,000 in this year's budget. So, you know, it's getting us there to, in reality, funding for this reserve. We have noticed in the last couple of fiscal years, I know we've brought it up before, that we are starting to see employees retire, and we've had to pay out balances. So this way it helps us prepare for it.
Anna, do you have any projections of how much we're going to need of that amount next year? Do you do any sort of projections based on people's interactions with human resources, or?
You know, I can give it some thought.
Okay. Any questions for the finance director? From any other board members this evening? Okay. If there's no further questions, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve the carryover of the remaining balance of $180,449 in account 0101-114-100-128 retirement liability from the 2020-2021 budget to the 2021-2022 fiscal year.
Thanks, Ann. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Rich. All those in favor? If there's no further discussion?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries 600. Thank you, everyone. Moving on to item 4F. This is a carryover of contingency for $61,803.
So again, this is what's left on June 30th in last year's budget, and regular contingency. That's another item that we budget for every year. Just requesting to carry it over into the current year. One of the items identified in the agenda item is, we're hoping to move to the new public safety building. That might be an area where we may have some unidentified operating expenses. That was used just as an example, but we can really have in any area unanticipated expenditures. That it's a good source. It's a good source to have.
Okay. Any questions for the finance director? If there's no further questions, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve the carryover of the remaining balance of $61,803 in account 01-01-120-200-500 contingency from the 2020-2021 budget to the 2021-2022 fiscal year.
Thanks, Ann. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Ann. Any further discussion? No further discussion, so I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries 600. Thank you. With that, I would like to table new business G, appoint the auditor for 6:30. We can move that to our regularly scheduled August meeting. I have an audit letter in the green folder this evening, which I have not had a chance to review yet. I won't read it aloud for the record because this is 6 or 7 pages. So we have time. I'll review that tomorrow and we can cover that on our August agenda if the board does not have a problem with that.
That's fine. That's good.
Okay. Everybody good? Very good. Okay. Moving on to old business. Does anybody have any old business they would like to discuss? If there's no old business, we'll move on to public discussion. Seeing that there's nobody left in our audience, we've scared them all away. I think it's safe to move on to board comments. Would any of our members like to have a comment recorded for the record?
I think we hit most of the public comments. I think we addressed those tonight anyway, other than there's one that,
Was there one that we did not
yeah,
address?
which is the counselors in school, which is not.
It's not related to the
it's
matter
not
at hand.
Realm, and,
Oh, good for you for tracking that. So we hit all the other
yeah,
points?
the insurance on the building, the contingency funds, the building insured, the boardwalk, the 50,000 for the
Right,
boardwalk,
right,
so
right.
those have all been hit.
Okay, great.
And I'll be happy to talk to him about counselors in school.
Okay, great. All right. So if there's no additional board comments, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thanks, Ann. Thanks, John. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nice job, everyone. Thanks. Thanks so much.